Hello, hi, and welcome to another video. So about 2 weeks ago, I got this comment asking me if I documented the cost of engine swapping my W203. And to be completely honest, no, I have no idea an exact amount of what it cost me. But I have this little setup going on over here, and I have all the receipts of everything I bought to do it, just organized in this diary over here. So in today's video, we're gonna go over that. So I will be adding up all the amounts after filming this while I edit the video, so it's gonna be as big as a surprise for me as it is to you guys. I just have to say, we all know a guy that can do something for cheaper, and I'm that guy. Already working on the next project over here as well. But anyway, let's jump right into the video and get started. Alright, so hopefully this microphone sounds a bit better, the echo in here is a bit bad, and then I will also throw up the amount over here. I do live in South Africa, so the currency we work with is Rand, so I will be focusing on the Rand, but I will also add the US dollar because I do have some viewers from America. I do love the States. So before we jump into the cost breakdown of the car, I just want to go over three little things. Number one being a small update on the current status of the car. It's just sitting outside under the cover. I've been enjoying the car very much, but it's just over here under the cover. Turns out it's not very fuel efficient. Who would have thought? And then a quick overview of the history of the car while I've been owning it. And then number three, why the hell I did this. So update on the car, it's doing great, more than great. I've driven about 1,000 kilometers, this many miles, since fixing the starting issue. So it's a perfectly running and driving car. I can get in it right now, start it up and drive where I want to go. 1,000 kilometers with no issues, no overheating, no oil usage. I'm just very stoked on that. Then number two, the history on the car since I've owned it. Bought the car back in 2018, blah, blah, blah. Modifications I did to the car when I started all this was a smaller supercharger pulley that I just had an engineer make me. He had a lathe and he took a piece of steel and turned just a smaller pulley. The car's boost went from 0.6 bar to 0.8 bar. Had the car on a dyno, had it mapped. Went from 105 kilowatts stock from factory, the smaller pulley and aftermarket intercooler, took it from 105 kilowatts to 117 kilowatts, and we ended up getting 130 kilowatts. After that, I only made 2 videos of the car, didn't drive it much at all because I wasn't happy with the power. To be honest, I didn't feel the power difference. And that's where we get into number 3. Why the hell I did this. So after the dyno and 130 kilowatts, all good and well, I took the car to a car builder or car tuner guy, and I asked him, how much will it cost me to bring my car to you and do a turbo conversion? And this is no word of a lie. He told me to do it the right way. He will charge me 100,000 Rand. To turbo my car. Even turbo noises isn't worth that much. So that's when I started doing research on engine swapping the car, because if I boosted the stock engine, I wouldn't want to push it too hard because those engines and parts for those engines in South Africa is still pretty expensive. And that's when I came across the M104. If you are at all into car stuff, I can almost guarantee you know about the 2JZ. That's Toyota's infamous beast of an engine. The 2JZ is a twin turbo Toyota engine. The M104 is a straight six, basically the same engine, but just made by Mercedes-Benz. And that is where we will start. So the first receipt will be when I went to a junkyard and bought my M271 engine for 9,000 Rand. So let's put 9,000 Rand up here and get this started. Now I do have to say I was extremely lucky when I found this engine, because this is the M104.995 engine out of this E320. That means that's a 3.2 litre and it produced 168 kilowatts if I'm not mistaken. So just by engine swapping the car, I would already gain a lot of power. Next up, I pulled the M271 engine from my car and I started fitting the M104 3.2 litre engine. And that's the next thing I had to sort out, was the engine mounts. And I got some 10 millimeters flat bar. That was 132 Rand, as well as 2 base plates that'll go against the engine for 36 Rand. Bit of work, bit of time, bit of blood, bit of tears. I got the engine mountings built for super cheap. Now the engine was not in a very good condition when I found it, so I just went ahead and bought 6 spark plugs just to cover some of the holes. That was 330 Rand. I also replaced the tappet cover gasket. That was 310 Rand. And then I went ahead and picked up a sump gasket for 220 Rand, because I will be rebuilding the oil pan. I also got all the pulleys from the scrapyard, and I could buy a fan belt. So that was another 200 Rand. I also got some cheap oil for the car just to flush it out after I've turned it over a couple of times. So that was 240 Rand, as well as an oil filter for 95 Rand. Then I also had to get the 3 coil packs with all the leads. I didn't get any wiring with the engine, so I went to another scrapyard and got a wiring harness of a SsangYong Musso SUV. They use the same engine, so I just got the harness of that, just a few plugs that I needed for 250 Rand. I made the oil pan out of sheet metal, so I picked up a 1 meter by 1 meter piece of sheet metal for 650 Rand. And I bought my own oil pan for the car. This is just for some round tubing that I got for building the exhaust system, so that's another 294 Rand, and that will be used to build the custom headers that I had to build, because the headers, the exhaust headers, didn't fit in the car. They were hitting the firewall of the engine bay. One of very many times taking the engine out and putting it back in again, but I had to replace the rear main seal on the engine. So that was another 370 Rand and a couple of days of hard work. Next up, I got the throttle cable. That was 425 Rand for everything I needed. Temperature gauge, that was another 317 Rand. The engine was also missing a thermostat housing and the thermostat itself, so that was another 380 Rand. And then I had to sort out the power steering. So I went to a scrapyard, I picked up a W203 power steering hose for 250 Rand. I kept my original hose, but I wanted to keep the possibility there that I can put this engine back. So everything I've done on the car is reversible and this engine can go back. But anyway, I took that power steering hose I got from the junkyard, took it to a hydraulic place. They custom made one for me to go from the M104 power steering pump to the power steering rack on the W203. That was another 534 Rand. At this point the car was pretty much ready to start, so I just had to finish up the intake manifold. So I just quickly slapped together a very easy intake manifold. I used some black rubber silicone pipes for that, and I still actually use the silicone on the car, and that was another 255 Rand. At this point the car had its first start. definitely one of the best days of my life. Not driving yet. 2 more things had to be done. The prop shaft, the drive shaft had to be shortened. That was another 391 Rand. I also had to shorten the shifter the same amount. So that's where my AC/DC welder came into play. The shifter bracket is aluminium. So having this welder, I was able to shorten that myself for free. At this point, I was still using the stock fuel pump and fuel lines, but that had to be upgraded because the stock fuel pump didn't have enough flow for the engine, as well as not having any return line, because that's just the way that system worked. So I started off by buying a sheet of aluminium, and that was 1,010 Rand, so that I can build my own fuel cell. But anyway, then I had to buy fittings and the feed and return line and a couple of other things. So that was 1,486 Rand. Along with that, I also got a fuel filter for 200 Rand and then a high flow fuel pump from Torque Tuning for 900 Rand. So I got the starter repaired 3 times, but I'm just gonna add the cost of 1 time because the other 2 times the guy did help me out. So the starter repair was 861 Rand, and that is still the starter of my M271 engine. Here's another one for spark plugs. I changed out the spark plugs a lot because I thought that was the reason for the starting issue. So here's another receipt for 300 Rand worth of spark plugs. I'm just gonna add that because that's the reality of it. I just wanted to flush all the dirt out of the engine because it was standing for who knows how long at the junkyard. So that was another 230 Rand. Next up was sorting out the exhaust. So I used most of the old exhaust, but to connect them all together and get all the runners on the exhaust manifold, that worked out to 756 Rand. And then I got the tail piece just because it looks kind of cool for 590 Rand. So the first intake I built, I used material that I had left over from other stuff I do, so I'm not going to add that. But very recently, I rebuilt the intake manifold, which looks pretty cool. You can check that video out. I'll leave a card over here. I built that out of sheet metal as well. So that was another 450 Rand for 1 meter by 1 meter piece. So along with the 450 Rand, just a few hours of work and planning, and I built the intake manifold. I do want to add another 3,000 Rand on top of all of this for smaller things like nuts and bolts, spray paint, and as well as fuel to get to all these places. Remember, each one of these slips is basically a trip to the shops. So this will be our total. Now, I don't see anything over here. I have no idea what the total is. So I'm gonna go edit this video and then come back to you after that. And there we have it. 16 hours of editing stretched over 2 days. And we have a video and we have a grand total. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, this is how it looks when I edit the video. It's really time consuming, but I enjoy making them. So it is a little bit more than I was hoping for, but it's still a lot cheaper than it would have been if I had somebody else do everything I did on it. So I'm very blessed to be able to do everything myself, and hopefully this inspires someone out there to just start doing something on their car, or building cupboards for their garage or anything like that, and show them anything is possible. I'm not a mechanic. I have no history with working on cars. I always did the basics, put wheels on the car, sound system, everything like that. But I've never worked on the engine or anything like that on a car. And 10 months later, 10 months I've been working on this. I have a driving car, and I can't explain all the emotions that I feel when I get in that car and I drive it. It's very rewarding knowing that I did everything myself.